Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our user group. It's good to have you with us. We've got a number of topics to get through today, but primarily we're going to be focusing on the campaign canvas. So the campaign canvas can be a very basic interface, or you can make it quite complex, like the one you can see right in front of you. This particular canvas on the screenshot is the user group campaign canvas that you will experience so far this month. So we promised you in the announcement that we would provide you with a way to look at how you can achieve a 32% lift in open rate when using a multi-step campaign canvas. And so that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to also look at managing campaign or event communications through the campaign canvas. And then the last one, we'll actually go into Eloqua and have a look at nurturing campaigns fundamentally and how they can work. A nurture campaign really at the end of the day is something that is generally just repetitive. So how repetitive you make that and the rules that you impose to move from one part of the campaign to the next is completely up to you, but we'll provide you with some ideas and options on exactly how to do that. Let's dive in and have a look at our first option, which is how do we gain a 32% lift in open rates. Now, where do we get that figure from? We didn't just pull it out of the air, I promise. We recently caught up with a long-standing client doing a little bit of analysis of their overall campaign performance over the last 2 years, and they've employed a particular method of utilizing the campaign canvas that we encouraged them to do some time ago. They adopted that advice and as a result have achieved a 32% lift in open rates when using the multi-step campaign canvas. And so all of our discussions today will be focused on the multi-step campaign canvas and not on the simple email campaign. So let's have a look at exactly how they did that. One of the benefits that you may have noticed with the new dashboard reports, specifically when looking at individual email as a part of a campaign, if you use multiple segments on the canvas, you can then view that performance of that particular email by segment. So if, for instance, you might have a segment that is your internal staff, or maybe it's a feed list, as we call it, you may have another segment that focuses on customers and potentially another segment that focuses on prospects, and maybe even another one that focuses on business partners. So that would be 4 segments sitting on the campaign canvas. Now, previously, you may have gone to the extent of trying to either use filter criteria to get all of those people into a single segment, or potentially you've uploaded various spreadsheets into Eloqua in order to merge them all into a single segment. The benefit now, though, is if you do leave them as separate segments, you will get increased granularity in the reporting. And so that's certainly something we would encourage you to think about doing. Let's have a look at what happens next. So using apps like the washing machine can help, and that will appear on your screen here in just a moment. The contact washing machine, which is that little app right here that you can see on the screen. So the contact washing machine is something that it can do a lot of things, but the contact washing machine enables you to cleanse data. And at its most basic, for example, you can make sure that before an email goes out, that a person's first name and last name is proper case instead of being all uppercase or potentially all lowercase. Now, the nice thing is if you create a campaign canvas template for use within the organization, you can configure the contact washing machine. And when you save it as a template, Eloqua will hold that configuration for you. So moving forward, if you access the campaign canvas from a template, then you don't have to worry about configuring the washing machine. It will already be doing what it should be doing, and in this case, it's changing first name and last name to proper case. Okay, so once we do that, we obviously want to send out our email, and so the email is sitting right here, and so then the email heads out. Let's look at the next one. Okay, so now we've got our contact washing machine at the top here. You can see we've sent our email out. And then here we're waiting for a period of time, or you could wait till a specific date and time. And then the next step is this one. So what we're doing now is we're checking to see if the person actually opened the email. Not did they click, not did they download the form or visit the website, etc., but just simply did they open the email. And it's this final step of checking to see if they have or have not opened the email, so the inaction or action that we mentioned there just a moment ago, delivers the results. So here's the basic flow of that particular campaign. And so again, segment at the top of the screen, contact washing machine, the actual email itself goes out, we wait for a period of time or until a specific date. This step is the one that helps perform the magic. And so it's this step alone, in concert with obviously then sending a repeat email, that has achieved that 32% lift. And so that's an average across all of the campaigns for this particular client and what they've been doing. At the end of the day, I mean, your objective is to have people read your emails, not simply to send emails, but to actually read those emails and digest the information that's contained within them. And so this is just one example of how you can very easily create that. Now, something to think about or to remember is that Eloqua will not send the same email to the same person twice. So you can't simply take this email, the first one, and then just drop it in to the step at the bottom of the screen. So you need to take the first email, save as that particular email, maybe call it 002, if this one's 001, call this one 002, etc. And then keeping in mind, of course, that you've sent it out, but it obviously hasn't worked because I haven't opened it. So when it comes to the sending of the second email, you might want to think about delivering that at an alternate time of day. So if this email went out in the morning, maybe you should try to do this one in the afternoon. You may even want to change days of the week. That could be another option. But you can also make sure, or you want to make sure, that you adjust the subject line of that particular email, because clearly the subject line on the first email didn't work because the person didn't open it. So there you go. That's how you can easily create a campaign canvas flow that will give you a 32% lift in open rates. So managing event communications with ease. So you can see this is our modern Macy here. She's a pretty glamorous marketer, and she's obviously all dressed and ready to go. Okay, so Stephen, hi Stephen. How accurate is opened email? Sure, really good question. Let's go back and understand the mechanics of how that works. Okay, so the way Eloqua understands that an email has been opened, it is that the email's arrived in their inbox, obviously, and then they've opened that email. Now, for those of you that use Outlook, this is pretty obvious, right? So what happens is you'll receive the email, there'll be outlines of images, and there'll be a button somewhere usually in Outlook telling you to download, would you like to download the images? Now, as soon as you download those images, that's what constitutes as an open. Now, you ask the question, how accurate is that? Well, it's as accurate as it can be, I suppose. There are all sorts of things that email clients and email servers are potentially doing to make that less accurate. If you've got some challenges with any specific campaign, happy to have a chat with you on that one and try and work out what the issue could be. But you can generally very safely assume that if Eloqua says that it's not opened, it's generally not opened. I mean, if we second guess it constantly, we probably wouldn't get anywhere. But if I take you back though to that particular slide where I've got that layout of the 32% lift, we can see for a fact with this particular client that has delivered results for them. This particular organization sells training solutions that organizations like yourself might do, etc. And so that definitely has equated to an increase in visits to their website and also inquiries and bums on seats in workshops. So that has certainly made a difference for them utilizing that particular step. So hopefully that answers your question, Stephen. Okay, let's go back to our event communications. The nice thing about events, certainly if you're new to Eloqua, the nice thing about events is they typically utilize just about all of the functional areas that Eloqua has to offer. So right across the campaign canvas, emails, landing pages, forms, shared lists, and look, I've probably forgotten things. There's components in there as well, obviously images, etc., field merges, all those sorts of things are used when creating an event. So from that point of view, it's a great place to learn how to use Eloqua and to automate things as much as possible. The one caveat with events is that it's probably not likely that you're going to have to, well, you will have everything ready at the same time. And so by that I mean when it comes time to send out your first email to invite people to the event, do you have everything ready? Do you have all of your follow-up communications? Have you even thought about post-event communications? Have you thought through, do you want to have communications on the day of the event, depending on the complexity of the event, if it's an all-day event with multiple sessions, all those sorts of things. We find the best way to do it is to break things down a little bit. And this is just one example of perhaps what those canvases could look like. I would imagine at its most you might do sort of canvas A, B, and C, so canvas 1, 2, 3. The first one would be your invitations that would go out to people, inviting them to register or to RSVP. That first canvas would be the one that would send invitations to people that haven't opened or haven't registered. So that's where you would do your sort of second invitation, potentially a third invitation as well, and maybe a last chance to register type scenario. So all of that could take place right here on Canvas A. So Canvas B now starts to communicate with those people who have actually registered, and so reminders go to people who have registered or have RSVP'd. And so that would become a different stream. You might want to have reminders a week out, maybe 2 or 3 days out, and then potentially on the day of. So that would be Canvas B. And then finally, Canvas C, which is the one that we probably don't focus on as much as we probably should, is the post-event communications campaign. Now, generally, highly unlikely that you're going to have everything ready that you need in order to do that. So the reason we need to have 3 potentially, or we generally do 2 at Marketing Cube, but generally 3 potentially, is that you can't activate a campaign canvas until all of the assets are completed and actually finished and saved within the campaign canvas. Now, I have seen people in the past say, well, what I could do is just create an email, I'll just leave it as a bit of a template, it'll have lorem ipsum text all through it, etc. And that way I can at least activate my campaign canvas. And you know what happens? What I've seen happen is that person goes on leave, the person that's replaced them is not really quite sure what's going on. They see everything's there, fantastic, so they just let it rock and roll, and then we send out emails with lorem ipsum and all sorts of horrible things in it. So it's always best to use the system correctly and try and avoid those sort of little hatchet jobs along the way, which can sometimes come back to bite you. As we said, at Marketing Cube, we typically, so with this event, as in the user group that you're on right now, we typically manage that using 2 particular canvases. The invitations and follow-up reminders are all organized and done using the campaign canvas, just a single canvas that is, and then we would move everybody into a post-event campaign where we send out notes and blog post updates and those sorts of things, where we capture notes from the actual session, etc. So that's one way to do it. Now, which parts of the campaign canvas are you going to use typically for an event? So what we've done is we've screenshotted those here for you so you can get a closer look at them. So segment members, emails, you want to make sure you include any form and landing pages on the canvas. As it says, it's for reporting only, but it will give you consolidated reporting and negate the need for you to have to pull multiple reports. Shared list member is something that you'll use considerably because the form will push people into relevant shared lists. So those that have RSVP'd yes, or those that have registered, etc., will go into their respective shared lists, and they become the source of truth for you as to who has or has not registered, and that's when you would send emails out to people who have not registered. The compare date function, so that's this one right here, the compare date function is really only necessary if you're using a dynamic segment. So a dynamic segment is when you drop the information. I'll show you a screenshot here in just a moment, but when you drop people on to the canvas, you either activate it once when the campaign goes live, or you can have people come into the campaign on a regular basis for the life of the campaign. So if the campaign is running for 3 weeks, you may set that particular segment to consistently pull people in once a day, once an hour, whatever the case may be. And so the compare date function becomes critical to help you do that, making sure you're delivering the right emails at the right time. Opened email is another important one for this particular campaign, and specifically this one at the bottom, which is move to campaign. So just to go back a step, if we've got multiple campaign canvases, canvas A, B, and C, we need some way to move people from one campaign to the other. And so that's how we do it. We use the move to campaign step on the campaign canvas in order to move that. The nice thing about doing that is it automatically moves everybody to the next campaign canvas, which generally is what you want. It just saves you having to cut another segment to drop on a new canvas, because you can have people flow from one canvas to another quite easily. Okay, so key canvas steps, the shared list. So why are we using a shared list instead of submitted a form? Have had this discussion a number of times with customers. Essentially what we're trying to do here is we need to remember the construct of campaign members. So when somebody comes onto the campaign canvas through the segment, they become a campaign member. And so the way this typically plays out as to why this can be a challenge, the way submitted a form is designed to work is it only asks the question of a campaign member. So it's only, as people are flowing through the campaign, it's only saying, has that particular campaign member submitted a form? Now, how does that play out? So typically it might play out, for instance, a salesperson comes to you and says, well, my customer, Jenny Jones, registered for the event, she filled in the details, she got her confirmation form, her confirmation email, but she never received any of the reminders, and so she forgot. Okay, so what typically will have happened in that scenario, if you're using submitted a form on a campaign canvas, is that somebody has forwarded Jenny an email, probably the salesperson, and she's gone ahead and registered, which is great. But unless we have a processing step on the form, which is to add Jenny to the campaign, she will never receive any of the following communications, as in the reminder emails, etc. So it's really important to understand that construct of a campaign member and how somebody becomes a campaign member. So they become a campaign member by, one, being in the original segment that's on the campaign canvas. That makes them a campaign member. The other way they could become a campaign member is by using the form processing step, which is to make them a campaign member. Now, for those campaign members who go ahead and submit the form, it's okay that they go through the step again to be pushed into be made a campaign member. That's not a problem. It just makes sure that everybody that submits the form then goes through the right processes. And then at the same time, we're pushing them into the shared lists. And so when the shared lists are sitting there on the canvas, we're making sure that everybody in those shared lists, all of the campaign members, will receive the relevant communications. I'll show you what this looks like on a canvas in just a moment. Okay, so what is a dynamic segment? Now, you've seen this a million times yourself. So you've got the segment here at the top of the screen, and when you double-click on the segment, then this pop-up window appears. So most of you by default will, and this is the default, will have this option, which is add members once the campaign is first activated. However, if you want to be in a position to add people to the campaign canvas on a regular basis, you'll need to select this second option that's highlighted here. Notice also that you can change the reevaluation frequency. And so here through the drop-down menu, you're able to determine, I think it's hours, days, weeks, months. I want to say years, but I can't quite remember. But I've got a canvas open here. Hang on a sec. Hours, days, weeks, and months. So you can check between hours, days, weeks, and months, any sort of period that you want to do. That's a way that you're able to, and this again, the way this typically plays out, you go ahead and launch the campaign, then the sales team or other members of the organization come up to you and say, hey, I just saw that email go out. I've got another 65 people here that I'd like to invite to that event. By selecting that second option that's highlighted on the screen right now, you'll be able to go back to your segment, simply load those people into the segment, and then within an hour, in this particular example, within an hour, those people will flow through into the campaign and then receive the relevant emails. So, a standard event canvas. So in this particular example, what we're looking at is a few multiple segments which are designed to drive people to a single invitation. And so that's the first one right here that goes out. Then what you want to do is make sure you have an evaluation step set. So here under the did they open the first invitation, you'll notice there's no wait step sitting in here. So you can either use a wait step or you could set an evaluation period on that particular email. You've got the option of doing either of those. And when we get to the nurturing campaign example, I'll explain the difference there. So essentially what we're doing here is we're then asking the question, did they open it, yes or no? And you'll notice we go off in the same direction, well, on opposite directions, that we ask the same question. Have they RSVP'd? In which case that's a shared list icon, so we're asking if they're in the shared list. Now you may ask, well, if they didn't open the email, how could they have RSVP'd? So we find that this is fairly common, especially within professional services where there might be an EA potentially managing a group of partners, etc., that the EA may receive the communication and then go ahead and register 3 or 4 partners within the business. And so what happens then, as far as Eloqua is concerned, those partners never opened the email. So the last thing we want to do is send the partners a second invitation when in fact they actually have already RSVP'd or registered. So that's exactly what those 2 steps are doing there, is just making sure that the people we're about to talk to have not registered at all. And so you've got 2 emails there. In this case, what we're doing is acknowledging those people that haven't opened the first one and haven't registered. The way we address them is probably very similar to the first one, maybe with a different subject line. However, coming down this side, we have a group of people who have opened the email but have not registered. And so the way we talk to the people using this particular email, number 3, would be a little bit different, because we need to subtly identify or acknowledge that they've opened the email but either got distracted or potentially didn't see any value in the session. So we just need to think about our wording and the way we engage with those people. And so you'll see from a visual point of view that everybody basically funnels down to this one point, which is a wait step and 2 days before the event. Now, of course, you could repeat this as many times as you wanted to here at the top of the screen, but let's jump down to waiting 2 days before the event. So we're waiting 2 days before the event, and then we come into this step right here, which again is just double checking to see if people have in fact RSVP'd. And then here we go into the reminder mode. So first of all, on our form, we would have asked people, would they like an SMS reminder, which is the experience some of you would have had today. When we ask you if you'd like an SMS reminder, if you select yes, we actually drop you into a respective shared list for that. And then what we do, just maybe because we're a little anally retentive, I'm not sure, but this was something that I think we should do. We just want to double check and make sure that we have a mobile phone number stored against your profile. If we do, then we use the cloud action step, which is to actually send the SMS reminder to you. If we don't have a mobile number, in this case, we'll send you down to email number 4, and you'll receive an email reminder. Appreciate that you asked for an SMS, but if there's no mobile phone number, we can't do that, so hence you'll receive the first reminder by email. And so then we wait until the day of the event, and then we repeat the process essentially, again checking to see have you RSVP'd. Because keeping in mind, there's been a few days between this first step up the top here and this second step down here. And so it's very likely that the list of people in the shared list has actually increased. So that's why you want to constantly go back and check your shared list, because that is your source of truth for people who have registered. And it's a dynamic list. It's constantly growing and having more people added to it. So you always want to make sure that you go back and check it before you send the communication. Okay, so the SMS reminder goes out. Again, we check to see if we have your mobile phone number. Let's bring you down to the next screen. So here we are. Do we have your mobile phone number? Again, if we do, out goes the SMS. If we don't, or you didn't ask for an SMS reminder, you receive the reminder. And so then you have the end of the campaign in that particular instance. Now, I'll show you again, as I said, when we get to the nurturing section, we'll walk through and show you the move to campaign steps and exactly what they look like. Let's have a look. We've got a question here. How often would you suggest it reevaluates with dynamic segments? So Tim has responded to Christiana. Derek will answer this in more detail. However, it depends on the type of campaign you're running and when you wish for your members to receive the email for a standard event campaign running a few weeks. Every hour tends to be the best. Yeah, absolutely. Tim's right on the mark there. It really depends on your business. It really depends on your customers, how familiar they are with you, etc. And so this is the question here that Christiana had about the reevaluation of frequency. Christiana, the only other thing that I would suggest you need to look at, what I was going to say is you need to be careful about when the email is delivered. So, for instance, once in this particular example, you can see in the back there, we've got the actual segment. We go through the contact washing machine, and then we go into this particular email. So, because you're running filters in the back end here, and if Eloqua is reevaluating that every hour, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it is feasible that somebody may do something at 1 a.m. on a Sunday morning. Like most of us are probably working at 1 a.m. on a Sunday morning, but anyway, we might meet the filter criteria and say Eloqua reevaluates, bang, you're into the campaign, and so there at about 1:15 or 2 a.m., you'll receive an email. So if as a brand, you don't really want to be seen as the company that delivers business emails at 2 a.m. on a Saturday, what you want to make sure you do is create a window on the email itself. And on the email itself, you can create a window of time for it to be delivered. So maybe it's just Monday to Friday, and potentially it's 9 a.m. through 5 p.m., and that's it. So if somebody meets the criteria at 2 a.m. on a Sunday, that's fine. They'll make their way into the campaign, but they won't actually be sent that email until 9 a.m. on the Monday, if that's the window that you've created. As Tim says, you can wait for less than an hour, and the way you do that is 0.01. So you can actually type in that field, 0.01, and that's the fastest wait time that you can manage within the platform. Kim has asked, so just to check, if someone isn't in the original segment but has completed the form and been moved into the shared list within the campaign, they will still become a campaign member? No. Kim, I'll jump onto the campaign canvas in a moment, but I'll show you the form and the form processing step to help you with that. Manuel asks, Oracle best practice for wait time. Pretty sure there's a recommendation based on the program cycle. Yeah, that's a bit sketchy, that one. I'm not aware of any particular direction from Oracle from a best practice point of view as to how long to wait. The first criteria probably would be whether or not you're a B2B or a B2C organization. It's probably the first differentiator. And many of our, our customers are almost split down the middle in relation to B2B and B2C. It's not black and white necessarily. Look, in a B2B world, I'm sensitive to probably giving it a few days from a wait point of view. In a B2C world, especially depending on if you're selling something, which generally you are, whether you're selling clothing or whether you're selling holidays or insurance to a consumer market or event space at events, etc., you probably would want to engage fairly quickly with people as they engage with you. And so a shorter wait step would probably be the best way to go. We do have I can see a few customers here on the line today who are definitely in that space, and it would be interesting to understand what they do. I might leave that question there and see if they've got something to ask or to suggest. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so nurturing leads with an always-on campaign canvas. We hear this term always on, but what does always on really mean? Well, always on basically means that it's a campaign that is running and will always deliver a particular result. Now, how do we do always on? Always on is pretty simple. It's just simply a matter of taking advantage, again, of that dynamic segment. Now, for the more complex Eloqua user, there are things like programs that can be run in the background potentially to manage an always-on type of approach, but I would suggest to you that most customers can manage always-on using the campaign canvas and looking at something like this. The key thing here, though, is to remember the end date of campaigns that you're setting up. So, for instance, if you go to our website on the home page and scroll down towards the bottom, there's a call to action there to become a member of the user group. And so for us, that's an always-on campaign. And so that particular campaign will always respond to people. In that particular instance, I think from memory, I need to double check it, but I think from memory, we decided to send the confirmation email to people as soon as they fill in the form, even if it is at 2 a.m. I generally find from my own experience, if I'm filling in a form and providing information, I kind of really want to know right away that it's worked, that it's happened, etc., etc. So that's an example of an always-on campaign. But you could talk about CRM integration. There are all sorts of ways that we can talk more about understanding always-on. So on that point, when we look at trying to identify an always-on campaign, and certainly a lead nurturing campaign would be considered an always-on campaign, would be to understand the source of truth. So what is the data that you have that will determine who gets into the campaign? So it could be something very simple like in the CRM, maybe on the lead object and potentially also on the contact object. You might have a tick box, and that tick box is called nurturing. And so if the CRM user ticks the box called nurturing on a particular contact or lead, within half an hour that information is picked up by Eloqua. That person is brought into Eloqua, and then they're added directly to the nurturing campaign. Now, of course, you could have multiple tick boxes in the CRM for different types of nurturing campaigns. Really, there's loads of options available to you, but that fundamentally would be one way to do it. But let's go ahead and look in Eloqua, and you'll see my notes that I've been scribbling on the campaign canvas. And we'll just cover off quickly a couple of those points that some of the people had asked about. So let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, so the first one was in relation to clicking an email or opening an email and looking at an evaluation step. So whereas you might do something like this, and have an email going straight into a step like that, what you've got to remember is that people, as soon as that email is sent, people move immediately into the open to email step. So what you'll want to do here is use the evaluation period, and again, you can play with it here. As soon as you activate the evaluation period, you'll see a little stopwatch. kicks into place right here. Now, the key thing to understand in this scenario, let's just play this out a little bit. So you might do something like that. And then you might do something like that as a follow-on type of communication. Okay, so if we've set our evaluation period for 14 days and we're asking the question, has somebody opened the email at least one time? Now, of course, you've got options there, but at least one time within the last week. And again, you've got options there as well. What Eloqua is actually doing, and there's one piece of information missing from the screen here that unless you know is the little missing piece of the puzzle, right? So what happens is the email goes out, this one, and then people come into the opened email step. Every 15 minutes, Eloqua is going to ask the question, have they opened the email? So for every 15 minutes over a 14-day period or a 2-week period, Eloqua will ask the question, has the person opened the email? As soon as they meet that criteria, they then move off in this direction, in the positive direction, which is the green arrow, as you can see. So you've got to think that through, right? So let's say this email goes out, people receive it, and within maybe 2 or 3 minutes, somebody opens that particular email. So within 15 minutes of that happening, we know that Eloqua is going to ask the question, have they opened the email? And so if they do, then they're immediately sent this next piece of communication. Now, that may not be ideal because that's 2 emails being delivered to the person within the space of 15 minutes or potentially 30 minutes, absolute maximum. But again, that may be what you want. But if that's not what you want, what you can do is utilize a wait step, potentially. So you could do something like this. And so it just sort of slows things down a little bit. You could do something like that. The other thing you can do, let me just add an asset here because you need an asset in order to look at the scheduling option. So once you look at scheduling, you can tick the box, and here you're able to identify the days of the week that you actually want that communication to go out, and maybe a window of time for when that should be delivered. And perhaps it's from 1 to 5 p.m. Your time zone should default to where you are, as long as your administrator has set that correctly. And then it's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, for instance, in this particular example. So knowing the date the original email went out, then you can sort of play with that and configure it. So you can either do a wait step. In this example, I'd encourage you to look at a period of time versus potentially a specific date and time, especially if you've got a dynamic segment dropping people into the particular canvas. Okay, so that's what that particular step was. Now, let me just open up that chat again. Okay, so Kim's question related to if somebody submits a form and they're added to the campaign or added to a shared list, does that make them a campaign member? No, not immediately. So let me show you what you want to do. Okay, so at a most basic level, every form must have at least the email address. And of course, you'll have first name, last name, etc. Something like that, just nice and easy. Okay, so when I go to processing steps in the back of the form, I can update the contact with the form data, which is 99.9% of the time. That's exactly what you want to do. You may want to send a notification email, which goes to people internally. You probably will want to send a submitter an email, so confirming for them. We talked about shared lists as well, and so it would be adding people to a shared list, etc. The key thing you want, though, to make sure the person is in fact a campaign member is to select the Add to Campaign function. And so the way this works, Kim, is that you would select the step, and then over here, you choose a campaign. And so what happens here is that it will load all of the relevant campaigns. Let's have a look at this one for fun. And so what you see, it actually presents you with the campaign canvas. And so what you would do is nominate the actual step that you want the person to be dropped into the campaign. So if I actually am a little bit smarter, what I would do is choose. So this is the actual campaign canvas for the event that we're in right now, that we're living, so to speak. And so if this was the example, I would move anyone that submits the form, I would move them to this step, which is the step that takes place directly before the reminders. Because they've registered, I don't want them to get any of these last chance emails, etc. That's all done. They've registered. They've done as we wanted them to do. And so you nominate exactly where you want them to go. And so that then sits here for you and also gives you the name of the campaign. Does that answer your question, Kim? Oh, okay. Thank you, Kim. I just saw that. All right. How do you stagger an email to a large segment? Okay. So, Jen, can you give me an idea of how large that segment is that you're referring to? Okay, 10,000. Right. So there's no system constraints in any way, Jen, that Eloqua that you would need to stagger those. Is there any particular reason why you want to stagger them? Is it to do with the website potentially? So should people click through and reach the website, it might overload the website a little bit? What would be the reason to want to stagger them? Yes, the website. Okay. All right, cool. So look, there are a few cool ways you can do that, and what might be better, just thinking of time here. Look, one of the easiest ways to do it would be to potentially, a question, are you loading them in from Excel, or are you loading them in from filters within the system? So you're building a segment within Eloqua, or are you bringing in Excel spreadsheets? They're using filters. Excellent. That's the right answer. Good. Okay. So there'd be a couple of really simple ways you could do it. If you use the compare contact fields within Eloqua, there's a couple of ways you could do it there. Another way is when you're on the actual email itself. Let me just grab an email again. You've got sending options. So you can break it into smaller batches and define an actual period for the delivery. So maybe it's over, well, actually, if it's 10,000. Well, I mean, you need to probably experiment and have a play with this, but maybe it's for 2 hours. So what Eloqua will do, it'll take you a list of 10,000 people, and it will break it down and deliver those over a 2-hour period versus them all getting pushed out at the same time. Just so we're aware, 10,000 emails going out is nothing for Eloqua to perform. That's nice and easy. But as we said, it's about controlling traffic to the website and trying to minimize that a little bit. So that could be a solution. Jen, does that look like that would be suitable for you to do? And it's something that you actually apply at the email level. Okay, fantastic. All right, let's go back now and have a look at nurturing. Thanks for the questions, guys. Makes our life a lot more interesting at this end. Can we filter click to email based on a particular call to action, not only? Yes, you can, Yana. You will do that. So Yana's question is, can we filter click to email based on a particular call to action only and not on any clickable URLs inside the EDM? Yeah, great question. So when you utilize this step on the campaign canvas, which is have they clicked an email, essentially what you're asking is have they clicked on anything? So they might have clicked on the link at the top says that, I can't see this, can I have a look at my browser? They might have clicked on unsubscribe or manage my preferences, etc. So there's a lot of things that people can click on in an email, but 9 times out of 10, you're actually more interested in a very specific link that person has clicked on. So how do you do that? Quite easily. So that would come under what we call a shared filter. And so a shared filter looks very much like segments in the way that you build it. You just determine what the filter value is, and then Eloqua will pose the question in the flow of the campaign. So how do you do that? Okay, very quickly. We go to Audience and Tools, and from there we go to Shared Filters. And you would click on New up in the top right-hand corner of the screen. And here you'll see it looks just a lot like segments, much the same. So easiest way to do it, Yana, is to access web visits. And you would want this particular URL, or this filter, I should say. And then you should be able to take a page from your website. Actually, you can see here we track ReadyTalk. We also track the Eloqua blog. But if I just find our general website, so here you can see some URLs from our website. These are about the blog, etc. And so I might have a link in my blog asking people to click to go to that very page. Just adjust your filters so they make sense. Exactly is not always a good option. At least is a better option. And then the date range here, you probably just want to conform that with your campaign, etc. We do within or within the last, let's say within the last 20 days, whatever works. And then once you save that particular filter, I'm just going to try and save a bit of time and go back to the canvas. When you get back here, you access the folder and all of your filters are available here. So we use filters for all sorts of different things. We have a couple of here that we've done for very specific events. There are some shared filters that we use based on frequency of emails. So has the person been sent more than one email a week, once a fortnight, sent more than 10 emails in the past 7 days? So there are all sorts of filter criteria. Some filters that you create will be campaign specific. Others that you create will be quite generic, and you can apply across many campaigns. But in this example, Jana, you've asked specifically about a very specific link in a particular email. To me, that would be a campaign specific filter to apply. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, now I really promise that we'll get on to nurturing. Okay, so the fundamental aspect of nurturing is to keep your brand, thanks Jana, will keep your brand in front of somebody. And so when it comes time for them to make a decision to buy, the hope and anticipation is that your brand is the brand that comes to mind first. And so the principle of nurturing is largely one that is repetitive in nature and just simply goes on and on and on, and will depend largely on the amount of content that you have available. So if we have a segment, we have our first email that goes out. In the construct of a nurturing campaign, I would be more inclined to use the wait steps than to use evaluation steps, but again, completely up to you as to what you think is a good thing to do. So again, if we're nurturing, we're probably not really wanting to hit people with 3 or 4 emails in a week. It's probably more likely it's once every 2 weeks, once a month, or something like that. So if we potentially, let's take the 2-week scenario. Now, in order to maximize your content, what I would do is also take a principle from the first campaign we talked about where we achieved that 32% lift. And so if I'm looking at this, I would then look at, have they opened my email? Now, if they haven't opened the email, what I would do here would be immediately send a repeat. So that would be a repeat of the first one. So it would look something like this. So this is email 001. And this could be email 001B, which arguably means I really should make that 001A, etc. So we have email 1 and we have version A and B. The naming convention does help, trust me, as you start going through. If you're looking at lots of content and lots of assets, it will make your life a lot easier. All right, so we've waited 2 weeks. The person did open the first one. That's fantastic. Keeping in mind it's a nurture campaign. We're just trying to simply get a message across. There may not be an offer specifically in the first one. It may simply have been just simply informational in nature. And so then these people start to move on to email 002A. And so the content moves on. So then that email goes out. We then repeat the process. Now, did you know you can copy and paste now? I shared that in the user group the other day, and a few people were quite surprised. So you can simply click on a relevant step on the canvas and just use your Command-C, sorry, using Mac, so it's Command-C. So however you copy on a PC, same thing, and then whatever it is, and Command-V for paste. Okay, so this one goes out. We wait, so this one goes out like so. We then wait for a period of time. And then depending on the thresholds, we find that early in the campaign, where you're really trying to reach as many people as possible, it's about just simply getting your brand in front of people's faces and hopefully getting them to open your emails. But then as you start to move through the campaign, maybe it's then time to start to think, let's lift the game a little bit. Opening is a fairly soft metric, but click is a much higher metric, a much better metric, I suppose. And so we can wait for a couple of weeks after the second email has gone out, and now we're going to ask the question, have they clicked on the email? And so we're just upping the ante a little bit. Now for these people over here with email 1B, what do we do with them? Well, we still want them to continue through the process. I would probably do something like this and put them in a wait step, etc. So what happens here though is the pack starts to split and move a little bit more quickly. So the people that go down the left-hand side will be a little bit slower. The people on the right-hand side will be a little bit faster. And so off it goes as you move through the process. And it's just a matter then of repeating the process over and over. Now, you can get more complex as you go through. You can start to look at external factors. If you're wanting to look at website visits, that again, another good indicator of engagement. And so keeping in mind when you use this particular step, a visited website, it's referring to any website that you have the Eloqua tracking code on. So sort of going back a little bit to Jana's point about a call to action in an email itself, with one particular link, if you wanted to use shared filters here, you could do the same thing. So if the campaign is focusing on a particular type of product that your company has, and there might be 7 or 8 pages on the website that talk to that, you could build yourself a shared filter that focuses on website, product ABC, and contains all of the relevant links on the website where people could potentially learn more about that particular product. And so that would enable you then to start to split the pack a little bit further as well. But from a nurturing campaign, it's really, as I said, it's really about the repetition of the process. So we have a template that we use for nurturing campaigns. It's an 8-step nurture campaign. And so it looks something like this. So if I start at the top of the screen here, sure you can see as much as possible. Okay, so the campaign kicks off, the introduction email goes out, we wait for a period of time, it could be 3 days, 3 weeks, whatever the case may be. We're looking to see if the person's opened the email. If they haven't, we send them a repeat, and then we wait. However, if they have opened it, we'd go straight to the second email. And then potentially wait again, check to see who's opened it, and here you'll see how the people on the left-hand side move a bit slower than the ones from the right-hand side, etc. And so it goes through. And so you can see here we've got opened, 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 and then we've continued with the open, but what you could do then is obviously also change some of those values to have they clicked, have they visited specific pages on the website. And then as the campaign unravels, there's another one we've got active at the moment that I can show you. This one is for people who join the user group from our website, this is the process they go through. And so what we do, let me come over to the left here. This is lots of fun, this one. Okay, so it begins life, once that page refreshes for you. So this one begins life from the website. People fill in the form. We use the contact washing machine to make sure they're in proper case. And then are they a customer? So if they're in our database already as a customer, they head off in the customer direction. If they're not a customer at the moment, they head off in the prospect direction, etc. And then you see we wait for a couple of weeks. Did they open the email? And then we've used a shared list here. So whenever somebody registers for the user group, amongst all of the shared lists that we drop them into, there's one specific shared list, which I think we call the all-time user group registrants. The reason we do that is that we wanted to be able to access from this campaign to understand if the person has in fact registered. At this particular point, I don't really care which one they've registered for. It's just the fact that they have registered at all. And so if they have, that's great. Then we wait a few more weeks because the user group happens every month, etc. And then we ask again if they've registered, and if they have, this particular email acknowledges that they've registered. Whereas these ones over here to the left encourage them to register and give them a link to come to the next session, etc. And then again, we keep checking, making sure they have or have not. And again, we communicate with them slightly differently based on whether or not they have or have not registered for the user group. And so that's part A, and then we have a part B, etc. And then pretty much it's the same over here for customers. Pretty similar, it's just the content is a little bit different within these communications. It's a little bit different as it flows through. So Again, that's basically a nurturing campaign, but you can see the key thing with any of the nurturing is just constantly to check before you send communications to make sure that the communication is as relevant and on message as possible. The last thing you want to do is send an email to somebody when in fact yesterday they had registered for the user group, and then I send them an email 24 hours later saying, oh, you haven't registered. So that's why we always have these checks directly before we send out the particular email. Do we have any other questions in relation to nurturing? No? Okay. Let me just show you one thing before we wrap up, just very quickly, for those of you that may or may not have seen the contact washing machine. So the contact washing machine you've seen utilized a few times today on a few different campaigns. It will appear it's an app that needs to be added to your instance of Eloqua. It's free of charge. There's no cost. So it's very, very simple to add. That's easy. Once it's there, it's available at the Campaign Canvas. You can see it down the bottom here from the actions. And the configuration is done. You simply click on the little edit pencil. And let's just use first name as an example. And so what we do is in step one, we first of all identify the source field. And in this case, it will be the first name field, like so. So that's our source field. You can add conditions. We don't need to add conditions in this instance because all we want to do is actually perform an action. And that action is to make the text within the first name field uppercase, as you can see there. And then we need to say to Eloqua, okay, now that you've cleaned that field, I need you to take that data and cleanse it and put it where? Well, we obviously would want this to go back to the same field. So again, our source field is the first name field. We're not going to do a condition. We don't really need to. The action that we want to perform in this case is to turn that text into proper case, meaning the first letter is uppercase, which is right. And then we tell Eloqua where to take that data and put it back. And in this case, we go back to the first name field. And you hit save. And once you hit save, you'll get a confirmation little green bar across the top. And then you're good to go. So just thought I'd quickly show you that. So it's still reasonably new for some people, but have a play with it. You'll also find information in the Help Center that will walk you through exactly how to configure it and the amount of functionality that's available with the contact washing machine. But thanks everybody for joining us today. We appreciate you making the time. We host these every month, so we look forward to seeing you next month. Have a great week, and we'll be in touch. Cheers, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.